There has been a deepfake video made that appears to show me being attacked in South London. The entire thing is a total scam, but I have had people contacting me unsure as to whether it's true or not.
If you took a time traveller from 100 years ago and put them into a hospital ward, they would be amazed. If you put them in a classroom and they would think they were still back 100 years ago. There was a Microsoft study done in 2024 of employers. I think over 60% said they would now only employ graduates if they could also come in with the skills to teach the rest of the company how to use the AI.
Yeah. Because, of course, the job market is radically changing.
We're constantly told that we've entered the age of AI.
But what does that actually mean, and what really matters beyond the hype?
In this series, we look past the noise to explore the ideas, decisions and technologies that are shaping how we live, work and even think.
From the stories that don't always make the headlines to the systems, founders and researchers building the tech that will define our future.
If you want to go deeper, stay ahead and hear the biggest questions about AI tackled by the people in the know, this is for you. I'm Lara Lewington, technology presenter and author.
And I'm Ben Clark, Director of Future Worlds, the tech startup accelerator for universities across the UK.
This is the age of AI. Ben, it's good to see you. We haven't had time to catch up since demo day.
How did you find the day?
It was really interesting. I met loads of companies at speed and also chairing the panel, really interesting to hear what the things were that people thought was holding up tech in Britain.
It was really good to get that kind of dollop of ambition and enthusiasm, particularly coming from Ali Mitchell, the investor there, Emre, they're the founder there of this is what we're great at here in the UK. This is why we can make an impact. And this is how we can go big.
What was the highlight for you of the day?
For me, it's always getting the latest startups pitching on stage. So we had 5 there pitching. In the morning, we're helping them get prepped. They're making all their mistakes. They're getting nervous. They're not quite sure if they can do it. There's all that uncertainty, the peril. But then come the afternoon, they all absolutely smashed it. And the response that they got from investors in the room was absolutely great. And they were just on cloud 9 by the end of it. That they knew they had done it. They knew they've got something that's amazing, and they know that they're at the start of a journey that can take them to incredible places.
What happens next for them after the pitch?
It's all about them following up with the investors that were in the room. So there's some really good connections that were made. That's really the starting gun for a whole load of discussion, a deep dive from the investors, doing some due diligence on can the tech really do what they're saying that it can do? Do they really believe in the market? Do they really believe in the founders? And for the founders, is this the right investor for me? Have they got the shared vision? Are they aligned on what we're trying to do? And if that all works, and there's so many ifs, buts and maybes in that process, but if and when it works, great things happen and there'll be deals done.
And one thing I really remember from the panel was the question of what's holding us back in Britain, and the answer was the trains. We need to sort the trains before we can sort anything else. And I think anybody who does long journeys regularly will absolutely relate to that. Another moment of the day was I said to someone, is that a pair of Meta Ray-Bans you're wearing? And they started recording me. It was terribly unnerving.
Yeah.
There was no purpose particularly to the recording. I was like, can you switch it off? And I don't know why it felt so uncomfortable, but that was interesting. And I also met a company using a large language model to dig out hate speech and to also, from big speeches, maybe speeches from world leaders, to kind of pull out the bits that are important, those sound bites that journalists might want to use. This was the idea for maybe a large language model being used for this in the future. Had a really interesting chat with them. They were called Zigzag.
Absolutely, yeah. And another company that's come through the AIR cohort this year. And that's where it's great when you get these brilliant AI researchers who understand what the tech can do and are motivated by solving real world problems. And that's a really good example of saying, well, so much AI slop can be used for fake news. It can be used for throwing out scams and complete nonsense. But you can also use the technology to root that out and identify where it's coming from and help law enforcement, help officials, help people in positions of power to really root out what's true and what's not. But you've had your own personal experience of stuff that's not true.
Yeah, indeed. What's true or what's not. Yes, I'm not normally the one in the news. I'm normally talking about the news. But there has been a deepfake video made that appears to show me being attacked in South London. So The idea is it's kind of CCTV footage that you're looking at. I'm unidentifiable in it. I mean, the video says it's Lara Lewington, then goes on to explain I'm Martin Lewis's wife, and I'm being attacked by an Albanian man who is being referred to in the video as an immigrant. It says the reason he's attacking me is because he wasn't allowed to sign up to Martin Lewis's quantum AI investment fund, which doesn't exist. It's a complete scam, and that Martin then says it's only for insiders, meaning British people, which obviously he would never be saying any of this. The entire thing is a total scam, and it goes from me being seemingly attacked in the street to a BBC newsreader telling the story, then to a police officer in the street who's giving a statement which descends from a police type statement into a whole description of the quantum, which is obviously not something that any police officer is going to be doing, and about how much money you could make. And then it goes to a whole thing of Martin talking about it. Now, the interesting thing here is the lip movements were pretty bad. This didn't look real. And at one point, Martin's nose sort of came off as he moved his head. It was very strange. And then it landed back in the right place. But I have had people contacting me, people that I know well, unsure as to whether it's true or not. So a friend from university called and she said, I don't think this is true. I think it's fake news, but I just needed to be sure that you're okay. And this is the problem. People believe things quite easily, often because they're only half concentrating on it, or even if they know it's not real, but they just need to be absolutely sure. And this is why scams manage to get through so easily. And vulnerable people are giving money. And this has been a problem time and time again.
And that's the challenge, isn't it? Is you can sort of almost laugh at some of the things that were really ropey about it. Like, you're not even identifiable. Martin's nose falls off. The lip syncing's dreadful. And yet, still, it triggers people's minds. They're not entirely sure, so they still have to check it out, which it emphasises just how high risk this is, you know, how much potential there is for damage in this fake news.
Well, it really does. And also, the AI is going to get better very quickly. So those lip movements are going to become a lot more believable, and any signs of nose coming off, etc., are not going to be the case for much longer. So it shows how easily people can believe something. And some of the elements that I felt made it appear untrue, like the police statement, for example, the AI will probably get better at knowing not to do that bit because it wouldn't be as believable. So it really is very concerning that these videos are out there in ways that people can believe them. Also, you think about a lot of stuff that people see on social media, you end up watching it very small. So you actually don't notice a lot of these things.
And you're just scrolling through, you're just kind of capturing a glimpse of the headline, and then maybe it's packaged with a BBC reporter saying it. It all looks like it validates it. There's a police officer giving a statement.
That's it. And
you
they look like the real
detail.
news platforms. And I think they tend to fall into two camps, that there's either these investment ones that are either about quantum AI investment or about Bitcoin, complete scams, or they're clickbait. They're just about getting click-throughs for a story, which then turns out to be a nonsense when you get there.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, the media also then jumps on it, doesn't it? It's like, Martin's absolutely devastated. This is absolutely dreadful. It's hit the headlines because, of course, there's a story in the fake news itself.
Yeah.
And so then the media wants to propagate that because, of course, they're using it for clickbait to try and drag people to their site.
Yeah, and today it's been everywhere. But as you can see, luckily, I'm all in one piece. I'm sitting here. I'm okay.
Fantastic.
I haven't been attacked in the street.
Brilliant. I mean, this is such a pervasive issue. It feels like there's more that we should be able to do to mitigate it, to stop it, to find the trolls that are pushing this out. And so I asked a leading digital forensic ninja, Professor Sarah Morris, why is it that this can still happen? Why is it difficult to lock it down? Why is it difficult to track these people?
There are a few reasons why it's difficult to identify people in these kind of scams. I think the big one really is that AI has lowered the barrier to being able to do this. So in the past, you needed some real technical skill and specialist software, but now you've got free and cheap AI tools that can generate these kind of deep fakes in minutes, often without requiring identity checks. So people who couldn't do it before now can. Secondly, the people doing this are really good at hiding their tracks. They use fake accounts, they use anonymous payment methods, they're constantly changing which websites and ads, they operate across many different countries. They're really good at hiding the metadata and engineering the prompts and stripping things out, making it really difficult to tell what's real and what's not, which just makes enforcement so much harder. In terms of what's been done, there's obviously legislation, but given how quick things move, that's really not going to work on its own. You need companies companies to take responsibility and you need them to get involved. You need a better reporting system where they actually listen and things can be removed. But even then, when it's out there, given how quickly it propagates, it's really hard.
The implementation of the Online Safety Act to protect against this stuff has been really slow. Plus, the social networks are not doing what they can. And this is really dangerous for real people because initially somebody may be believing the scam, feel that they want to put some money into it, which is terrifying that people are doing that as a result of an AI video, putting in 250 quid, then they're being shown a platform that suggests that £250 is now worth £1,000, and they're thinking, great, I'm going to put in more. They put in more cash. It looks like it's making more and more. They're then getting lots of calls to encourage them to keep on giving, and they end up investing in this scam more and more money. They then reach a point where they think, I want to get the money out, and suddenly there's a problem with liquidity. Or maybe they're based in Switzerland and there's some regulation and they can't get the money back. And this is where people are losing huge amounts of money, and it's got a real world impact.
And this is where, as you say, it's a real world impact, the blurring between the content may be fake. The AI has just generated it, both the content that was part of the scam, the platform that they might use to perpetuate the scam, all of that's fake. But the impact on people is real. And that is when suddenly you get this hugely blurred boundary. So many people hide behind deepfake saying, well, it's just fake, it's just pictures, it's just imagery, it's just video. It doesn't really matter. But the reality is the impact on people's lives, whether they're the subject of the deepfake video or whether they're the recipient, the person who's responded to it, that impact is real.
Yeah, you get a trusted face supposedly saying something and people will believe it.
So as ever, Lara, loads has been happening in the world of AI this week. And so let's just pick off a couple of headlines. One of them, which is great to see again in terms of brilliant, huge scale investment going into AI infrastructure here in the UK. And this time, Nick Clegg, Sheryl Sandberg, both involved, getting the band back together from their Meta days. We've got Nscale, an AI data center firm. It's only about 2 years old, building AI infrastructure here in the UK. And they've raised a whopping $2 billion round just recently. It's at about a $14 billion valuation to build their infrastructure here in the UK.
It's incredible, these numbers we talk about every week. How real and meaningful is this figure and what's happening?
I mean, the figures are real. I mean, they are significant cash going into building out new infrastructure. And certainly this one looks like it's private investment going in to build that infrastructure. There's been some commentary recently about some of the big numbers that the UK likes to put out about AI investments. Some of those are really repurposing existing infrastructure. Maybe there's a bit of smoke and mirrors going on in that. But this is a funding round. This is money going into a new company to build new infrastructure.
And at the same time, the Anthropic drama continues to unfold. Sadiq Khan has invited Anthropic AI to expand its operation in London after what's taken place in the US.
Good old Sadiq, he's rolling out the red carpet, and I think the UK absolutely should be rolling the red carpet out and offering a fantastic home to an ambitious, hyper-scaling, foundational AI models to come and build here in the UK, particularly when it is a firm that is wanting to insist on having the safeguards, responsible use of AI. And of course, that is at the very heart of the dispute that Anthropic is currently having with the US government. This is the first time that the US government has blacklisted one of its own domestic firms as a supply chain risk, and that specifically stops government departments using that technology.
And since that's happened, the company is suing the US government. This is quite a drama.
I mean, it's worthy of an EastEnders plot, and it is just
a full
rolling.
movie. I'd give it a full movie.
Absolutely, dun dun dun. But it just keeps on rolling, and we don't know how that's going to play out. I think Dario Amodei as a founder is, as we've said before, unusual. He doesn't fit some of the molds, and I think is willing to act on principle, and he is following this one through. So we'll see how that plays out over the long term. But in the mix, the war side, the use of their technology for military purposes is really where the battle line is drawn with the US government. Great that Sadiq is offering a welcome home here in the UK, but at the same time, we're also getting headlines about AI technology being used here by the police for mass surveillance in Premier League games, championship games, and that is the other pillar of Amodei's very strong stance that their technology cannot be used for mass surveillance in a domestic context. How do we feel about the UK as a safe home there? Daria Amity would not be happy with that. How do we feel in terms of the use of that technology? It will make grounds safer. It will help to keep football hooliganism out of the stands. That's a great thing. We would want to celebrate that. But what about the biases in the technology? How representative of our population was the training data that was used in the technology that will be used for surveillance? Will ethnic minorities be unfairly disadvantaged by the use of that technology in mass surveillance? How do we feel from a civil liberties point of view? How do we feel as free individuals that that technology would be used to screen us as we walk into our favourite ground?
Yeah, and this is just one of the latest questions over AI ethics and how we use this technology.
Yeah, it's a question and a story that will keep on rumbling.
And our final bit of AI news this week, I love this one. A young tech enthusiast in India has got a bit of old retro kit and turned it into something AI powered and pretty cool.
It's like a 50-year-old piece of technology that was groundbreaking in its time, but he's repurposed the outer skin to turn it into an AI-enabled chatbot. So you can pick up the receiver and then you can talk to it and you can ask it to order a cab, to order a meal, to book travel for you. It's just fantastic.
Isn't it fun? A bit of retro brought together with AI.
Absolutely, but just goes to show, brilliant young mind playing with this technology. I think it's a Raspberry Pi that he's embedded into that, can achieve fantastic things.
Yeah, and what's funny is we take all these steps forward to make really high-tech, brand new things, but actually there's still a bit of love for the old retro. So it's quite cool to be able to bring back something that is otherwise decorative and actually make it useful.
Absolutely. I just love the thought of him giving it to his grandmother and his grandmother's being completely comfortable then interacting on a phone and perhaps believing when she says, "Hey, Kiri," that Kiri is a person.
As ever, plenty to unpack from those headlines, but time to get into the nitty-gritty. Each week we take on one big question from the world of AI and invite a leader in their field to help us answer it.
Today's big question is this: will AI fundamentally change education?
Today we're joined by Dan Fitzpatrick, otherwise known as the AI Educator, and one of the leading voices on how AI is reshaping schools and learning. A global advisor to governments and education systems, Dan works at the front line of helping teachers and leaders navigate AI responsibly.
Let's welcome Dan.
Dan, there is so much that we could talk about. What a topic. You advise governments and schools. What is the number one concern that you see being talked about?
Yeah, I'm really lucky. I get to talk with people around the world, educational leaders, people on the ground in classrooms, and as you say, at a governmental level. You know what? It's such a mixed bag about what people think they need or the part of the journey they're on when it comes to artificial intelligence. One of the main problems I see is everybody seems to be waiting for permission. And what I mean by that is, I think, when it comes to technology, you always get like a bit of the early adopters, and we've kind of hit that with AI, especially around AI chatbots. And for it to kind of get into that area of, well, now bringing everybody else along, it needs a leadership decision. And I think too many of us are treating artificial intelligence as a tech project rather than a leadership opportunity. And I think that's where we're at right now. And because of that, I think most educational organizations, in my view, seem to just be waiting for that top-down decision for permission.
And so how does that play out day to day in a school maybe that you'd be working with?
Yeah, so what we find is that I suppose those early adopters are using artificial intelligence, so especially generative AI and chatbots to help them, like what everyone's doing, those productivity gains. So maybe help draft an email, maybe help plan a lesson. Teachers have got to plan lessons. Maybe help just with a bit of kind of what we call brain dump. So just going, right, I've got these thoughts in my head, I've got this idea for a course or for a unit of work. Can you help me make sense of it? And using tools like Notebook LM and ChatGPT and all of that to a certain degree. So that's kind of one level. The next level is some schools are starting to adopt educational-based AI tools. So I suppose those companies that kind of got in early and made educational platforms around this new technology, which has more advantages because they're kind of pre-trained to help teachers more specifically. So we've got the productivity side of things, but we've also got what we call in education the pedagogical side, so essentially the learning side of this technology as well. And
of course, some of those tools were being developed pre-lockdown. I remember going into lockdown and had been working with a founder of AI for Education platform, and so I had free access to this platform. So homeschooling for me, I was like, great, there's a tool that's going to help me, and it really did help me with lessons on the ground for some of my, two of my children at least, that were at an age that they could use it. But of course, that was before ChatGPT had come out, and everyone suddenly discovered that LLMs were a thing, and they'd never heard of it. How's that playing out on the ground in terms of the difference that AI can make to an education program, to a syllabus, to a working with a whole classroom of children?
Yeah, it's interesting because, I remember, because I've been a teacher myself in a classroom and using kind of machine learning models to help with quizzing and to be reactive with students. And then I remember weeks I was working in further education at about 2 years before ChatGPT came out, and testing these early models and looking at how they could help with things like coursework, helping teachers kind of read through reams and reams of text. Now that kind of anybody can access it, and most people are. I mean, you look at the data, we look in 2025, a lot of the data suggests in the 80 percentile of teachers who are using this technology. Same with students, although I think it's probably gotten a bit further now. I was working with a school in New York last week, and they just surveyed all of their high school students, and they're at 100%. So 100% of their students are using a chatbot to help with their schoolwork, essentially. Not just schoolwork. I don't know if we might want to come back to this, but companionship as well, which is a little bit worrying. In fact, probably a bit more than a little bit worrying. But we're starting to see a lot of students using it for that as well. But now that kind of you've got this technology that anybody can access, I think there's a bit of a divide. So using this technology within the school institution. And I suppose teachers, educators can control that to a certain degree. So some of them are adopting some of this new tech, these new educational platforms that are out there, which come with these guardrails. But that can't stop students going home and having access to ChatGPT and having access to Claude and using this as well. So we're in a really mixed landscape, to try and answer your question here. And I think, coming back to my original point, that's why leadership matters more than ever right now, because we don't want to get in a position where teachers are going home feeling like they've got to kind of do this covertly using a free version of this technology and putting sensitive data in, and that happens, unfortunately.
It's also a really emotive issue. Clearly, you were quite happy for your kids to do it. You work in tech. How did other people around you feel about this? Did you have other friends who wanted to embrace it? How did the school feel?
Yeah, I think, as you say, a really mixed bag. For some people, they're instinctively kind of concerned about it and fearing that there's a loss of that. Like you talked about the pedagogy, that kind of human interaction. For other people, saying this is brilliant. This is then bespoke to the individual needs of my child. This is like having a personal tutor that I can't necessarily afford, but I could afford a platform. And thinking this is great. This is opening up that kind of additional quality. So a real
that's
range.
where you get something really personalised. And I guess in lots of instances, AI is allowing for amazing personalisation that makes a real difference to the education someone's getting. And AI is many different things. It's many different things in education. So there's how right is it to use a large language model? There is how much do we compensate for topics that maybe a child isn't good at, that we help them with to level the playing field? Should we be doing that or not? Do we just accept some people are better at maths, others are better at English, and stop trying to balance it out so much? Or do we want to try and make everyone as good as possible at everything? And also, and I think this is potentially the biggest challenge right now, is not only the speed everything's changing, but nobody knows what the workplace is going to be at the end. We don't know what we're trying to prepare our children for. And I think time and time again, we hear these lines of it's about resilience, it's about problem solving. Well, actually, there's also some sort of cognitive impact on what you're learning and how you engage, and actually what that does to you in the longer term and what you're capable of. How on earth do you balance out all of this?
I think you've touched on something there which is key to all of this. And that is, what is the purpose of education? It's a big question, and I
expect you to answer it right now.
but the thing is, you get a group of teachers, government ministers together, anyone together, parents, ask them that question, and you're going to get a different answer for every single person. And I started an initiative about a year and a half ago now, where we tried to bring people from Parliament together with the tops of some big educational organisations in the UK. We got them all into a room in London, and my first question to them was, what is the purpose of education? Because if we actually want to progress here, if we want to decide how we adopt this technology and how much we let it disrupt education, we actually need a direction. You can't do anything strategically without
you don't know what you're
direction.
trying to achieve.
So exactly. So, and we're still in that position where, first of all, I don't think there's any appetite to really answer that question. And I think we've just kind of come to the general consensus that as you get into secondary school and kind of the upper half of primary school, is an academic endeavour to get the highest grades possible so that you have as many opportunities to get to a university or get into a job as possible. The thing is, that model is being disrupted massively by artificial intelligence, because in that model we rely on the transfer of intelligence from the teacher at the front of the classroom to the students. And that model has built in it a certain amount of control. So we decide what you learn. We decide the subjects you can learn. And it's worked really well. I was a teacher. My kids are in state primary schools. I love the system. I want to help the system. But actually AI is kind of shining a light on some of the flaws that have existed for a while. And the problem is the myth that we are still in control, I think, is now starting to crumble because, like you say, and let me tell you a story. I've got a friend called Phil, lives in Manchester. His daughter, Daisy, was struggling with maths. This is about 2 years ago now. Phil's not a teacher. He works in marketing. He'd been playing with ChatGPT from the day it was released with his marketing copy and seeing what it could do. He was really struggled with helping his daughter with her homework, like I would, like even at like year 5 level.
This was never a thing. Parents never used to have to help children with homework.
But he just got ChatGPT to form part of that kind of, for want of a better term, relationship with his daughter when it came to homework. And they bounced questions off it when ChatGPT came out with GPT, so little AIs you could personalize and pre-train. He created it, based it on their family dog, so it was a bit more familiar for her.
Yeah.
Literally within a few months, she went on to win a certificate in maths because she'd advanced so much. And I think educators thinking they're controlling this is just not true. And if you've got a parent who's innovative, entrepreneurial, if you've got a student who's innovative, entrepreneurial, and they're going home and doing this technology, they can do so much more.
And I can see your excitement at how much progress, like your friend's child, could make in maths. As a real example, as a teacher, that's exactly what you want for the child, is to see them flourish and progress. And what is it that first excited you as a teacher at using different tools, maybe in the early days?
Yeah, I remember this one thing, and it was kind of the first post I put on X, which went viral and kind of started this new career for me, I guess, in terms of being able to do what I'm doing now, is I remember just screenshotting. So ChatGPT didn't even have an app at the time. It was like early December. Went onto the browser, started recording on my phone the screen, and I just got it to create a lesson plan. And I knew it would work because I'd used earlier GPT models before ChatGPT. I was surprised by how much it had advanced, and I posted that online. But the interesting thing is that using it for things like that, I wouldn't recommend now. But what excited me was the saving of time. Yeah. So like many people know, because teachers like to tell everybody that teachers have got a lot on their plate, a lot of kind of the invisible work that goes on behind the scenes. It's very, very time consuming, like many jobs, but that doesn't take away the fact it is very time consuming. And so my passion was imagine we could just save a few hours. Imagine when that teacher on an evening has got their laptop on their knee and they're watching Coronation Street, but also marking 30 kids' work.
Could you automate the marking?
That could just give them that time back so they could actually talk to their partner rather than be on their laptop.
And concentrate on Coronation Street.
Exactly. Yeah. Important things. Yeah. So that was my
EastEnders if they're telling.
But I think it's probably also important to say that it's not just going to help us. I do think and being realistic with this and honest, I think it's going to probably disrupt some of the things we do as well.
Sure, and you come from a philosophy background initially, and when you talk about leadership in education, I guess some of it is about what is our philosophy of what education really is, whether that's through primary, secondary school. From my position in a university, that's then opt-in, that's optional education. It's expensive. We've got to justify why someone would want to go to university. What is it that they're going to get from that, rather than just using AI to support that learning?
Yeah, and I don't know if you heard this last week or the week before. Some graduate in the United States had created an AI agent called Einstein AI, and it quickly got pulled for IP reasons. However, the technology behind it, and essentially what it was a student could buy it, a license, and what it would do is it would go into their learning management system, like the place where all of their lectures are put, where their notes are put, where their assignments are put, and it would literally have free reign. It would watch those lectures, it would complete the assignments for them, and it was billed as an AI that could do college for you. Mm-hmm. Now, my question there is, if your college course can be done by an AI.
Why are you doing that course?
Why are you doing that course? And maybe you need to get a bit more creative with how you're assessing your students, what you're teaching, and what you demand of students if they're going to survive in this new world.
Yeah.
But even within that, like what we're starting to see is that you had obviously people leveraging large language models to complete assignments and lots of essay assignments, and it would be sort of common chatter among students when it first came out saying, well, if you're happy with a 2-1, fine, just stick it through the large language model, you get a 2-1. If you want a first, you're going to have to work a little bit harder. And you're thinking, wow, it's at that level already. You had this move to lots of online assignments during COVID and online assessment because of COVID. And then with the use of AI saying, wow, we need to do it in person because we've got to lock down on the cheating. But now with smart glasses, we've had examples then of students using smart glasses to cheat on an in-person exam. And you're like, wow, okay, the opportunities to game the system are endless.
You'd think that'd be hard to do. There's someone walking in with some metal Ray-Bans on. You might think, why are they wearing those?
Absolutely. And to be fair, they were panned by their peers for using glasses in such a clumsy way. For some of them saying, yeah, if you need to cheat on that assignment, God, you've really got no hope. But of course, that's all of the things that people worry about around AI, turning our brains to mush, and that we just use AI, we depend on the tool, and we can no longer think critically, we can no longer evaluate. Like, how do you see that playing out?
I think it's perfectly valid, and there are still some levels of education where we need to protect students actually learning the ground knowledge of subjects. So I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater here and say, right, we need to completely change how we do education, because we've learned quite a bit of how we do education really well.
Yeah, and we need to understand the world around us. We also need to know how to prompt the AI, and we need to be able to work out what we're getting back, whether it's right or wrong.
Yeah.
So actually, you still need the education. It's a bit like you need to know how to drive to be in a self-driving car for when it suddenly calls upon the driver. And in a way, you need to learn these things to a really high level, to be really good at them, to be better than the AI.
You shared some really interesting stuff, I think, recently in Forbes around Anthropic's AI Fluency Index and how it was highlighting that really fluent users are not only prompting, they're then interacting and iterating, but particularly evaluating the responses that are coming back. And that higher order skill is absolutely essential. It seems that times in with exactly that, unless we can have that interaction and we're prompting people to use the tools to help them to evaluate, then it...
Yeah, that was a two-edged sword, that study. So what they found was Anthropic studied a week-long conversations of their users and found that actually the skills of iterating, the skills of being able to say to an AI, actually, that's not what I meant, this is what I meant, could you change that? I've gotten really, really good among users. However, when the AI then produces what looks like a very polished professional output, and what tends to be called artifacts, so whether that be a document, a website, or whatever that might be, then our ability to critique it goes through the floor. And it's almost like, because it looks really professional. And some of their hypothesis was, actually, that's not what we just do with AI. We do that with each other as well. So if someone comes in and sounds like they know a lot, if someone comes in and sounds like they can quote lots of things and share loads of facts, actually, psychologically, most of us would defer to them. And actually what they're finding is we're doing that with AI as well. But AI is really good at doing that, but like you say, hallucinating, not getting everything right, not having access to all the information, bypassing our personal judgment. And so there's a gap there now of how do we build skills so that we are critically analysing even those polished outputs. And I think these are, like you say, Lara, are such essential skills now. And we can't just keep doing what we've always done in education. We now need to make space for these important new skills now.
Yeah, how do we bring these skills into schools? Is this a matter of extra classes, that we're not actually turning the whole system on its head? These are just extra lessons that we need to have.
And the utopian or dystopian maybe view around it could also be, rather than just add more, do more lessons, it could be, well, how much can you automate? You talked about the menial tasks that potentially AI could take away from a teacher. How far could you go with that with humanoid robots, for example, and actually automating the delivery of a lot of the content that students need? Perhaps you could get to a point where far more of that is delivered automatically, and then fewer teachers maybe, or teachers doing higher order activity to inspire individuals to keep them engaged with whatever they're doing.
Imagine how excited the kids would be with a humanoid robot.
But potentially it becomes cheaper to deliver education through far more dependence on tech to then lower some of the barriers that we have.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept. I was working with a school in Sacramento in California last year, and they've just partnered with a local company who are going to buy them one of the Tesla Optimus robots when they become available. I'm not sure they're going to get it to teach lessons, but I'm
imagining parents' evening.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But there are equivalents. So there's Alpha School in the United States. Now, Alpha School gets a lot of bad press, gets a lot of good press. But essentially, they claim to be able to teach a full day's worth of content in 2 hours using AI systems. So students are online, they take part in various learning apps that are AI powered. And then what they do then is, because they've kind of learned what they need to do in 2 hours, in the afternoon, they spend time together on social activities, on kind of those meta cognition skills. Online schools are growing massively at the moment. A friend of mine called Hugh has one of the fastest growing online schools in the UK at the moment.
Wow.
And they are getting a lot of demand, mainly from, when you go back to COVID, there was 1 or 2 students in every class that actually thrived online during COVID than they did in class, because of things like anxiety, because of just being distracted. And he's meeting a need now for those students, and athletic students and students who travel a lot. But actually, I think we're now getting more savvy to the fact that there's opportunities here within education. Now, when I say there's a problem, I do worry that all of these schools, they need payment, and so the equity gap here could grow. Yeah.
And you talk about kind of the AlphaGo side, that there's an extreme in our kind of comprehensive education system. I could imagine the idea you talk about, it's mass education, but AI gives us the opportunity for mass personalization as well. And you could imagine in that context, teachers brilliantly leveraging tech so that the individual needs of the 30 students that they're working with are being met, all at completely different paces, and that they can do the higher order side of the engagement, the inspiration, the picking people up who are lacking the motivation, but enabled by tech to work with the individual needs of each student.
Yeah, I think that will grow. We're kind of in the early stages of that at the moment, but we're now starting to get AI that's being developed that has the security guarantees that can be plugged into our information systems. And that's where all the key data is, in terms of, does this student have a special educational needs plan, and have there been strategies developed with that student, with a counsellor, that the teacher just doesn't have time to read and pick up on? Could the AI help adapt that universal task that teacher was planning to do just for them? And I think we're kind of early days in that, but I think that's quite exciting territory of where this could go and really help with personalization.
What do you think it'll look like in 10 years?
You know what? I'm really worried that nothing will have changed. The education system, I think, holds off innovation at arm's length. Personally, I think we can't do that any longer because the world is changing so much around us. An old friend of mine, David Price, who's sadly no longer with us, used to say that if you took a time traveler from 100 years ago and put them into a hospital ward, they would be amazed. If you put them in any type of industry, they'd be amazed. You put them in a classroom, and they would think they were still back 100 years ago. Now, that's not saying we need to stick loads of tech into the classroom, but it's about the overall strategy of what we're doing. Is the model of teacher in front of 30 students still the right strategy when it comes to this? Or do we need to get more creative with what we do? And I think the onus of what could change has to be on educational leaders now. It has to be on government leaders to go, right, how do we prototype this? How do we think about what this could look like, and not being afraid to try things out and learn from other countries as well?
You talked about maybe the concern you have about equity within that presumably there will be some people who will embrace it, some leaders who embrace it and leverage that very effectively, and others, laggards who don't want to. And of course, the experience of students will be dependent on the leaders that they are part of. How do you see that digital divide playing out? Like we saw it in COVID with those that had access to the technology, those that didn't. It will be the same with AI, presumably.
I think we're already seeing it, and I think that gap has been growing for the last few years now between students who've got the skills or have even just self-taught themselves how to use this technology. I work with schools, and granted, they tend to be private independent schools who've got resource to do this, but for the last few years have been running with this technology, have been starting to implement it, and the gains that they're making are compounding. And it's going to take longer for those other schools to catch up. Now, I'm not saying every school has to be a front runner, but I think we need to start looking at this in a serious way.
Just to be clear on what they're actually using, because obviously there are age limits with the large language models, are there any versions that are created to be suitable for under 13s, for example?
Yes, so it's very, very narrow, but some educational platforms that have created chatbots that a teacher can pre-train have certain guarantees around them. Plus also Google Gemini. So Google Gemini, if you're using it within their own learning platform called Google Classroom, they give guarantees that it will be safe for students. Now, not all schools are wanting to give that access to students for risk reasons, but actually the Google now claim that can be used.
Yeah, Google Classroom's been around for years, of course. I remember the original conversations when I was covering it 12 years ago, probably. I can't remember the exact time scale. And it was very much about democratizing education. This brings the classroom to any children anywhere in the world. How do you see this on a more global scale? Because this could really democratise education. There is certainly benefit in AI being brought in. We have huge debates over whether it's for better or worse here in the UK, but it can make a huge difference.
100%. And end of last year, Oxford University Press released a report where they said 90% of high school students had learned a new skill with AI. The problem was that what was it? 60%, around 60% had also felt AI had been detrimental to some other skills. It depended on the task, but it was things like those being able to critically analyze, because it was just so much easier to go, yeah, okay, because it looks good. It looks like a good answer.
Yeah, and that's a bit of a problem, because that's one of the main things you need in the post-AI world.
Exactly, but it just shows how complex the edge of this progress is with technology.
There's nuance everywhere.
Right? Yeah, and you know what? I do it myself sometimes. Sometimes, like when I read that report, I saw myself a lot in it because I thought, you know what, I'm doing this as well. I'm trying to navigate this frontier for my own work. And sometimes I go, you know what, I've trusted you for the last 10 times. I've seen what you've done. Okay, I'm going to trust you this time. And I think we're all on that journey. But I think the important thing is being honest with our students and letting them know that actually we're all on this journey together. Their teachers, their parents are trying to figure this out in real time. They're not alone. And maybe we can learn from each other on this.
And that's one of the challenges, isn't it, with this generation, of course, that they are being parented, they're being taught by people who haven't grown up as digital natives, who haven't grown up always immersed with this technology. So, yes, we're learning it at the same time as our children, our students are learning it. We're not in a position where it's relatively static and we're just passing the knowledge down generation to the next generation. We're all having to learn it together. And I guess that's a fundamentally different dynamic in education.
And actually listening to that, you'd think, well, as a parent, why would you give your kids AI? Because we're still trying to figure this out. And if we don't want to get in that same position that we are with social media, where we were figuring that out together, and we realised we probably shouldn't have given it to our kids so early. So there is, I completely get that some parents, some schools might want to just go, no way, no chance. We're going to say, we're going to carry on as normal, and then maybe in 5 years' time, if we come across some deep research that says this is beneficial, then we might consider it. I think, to be honest, I think, okay, if you want to do that, do that. But my problem is, then 5 years is a full high school
Exactly. It's
career.
a whole generation of a high school career
Yeah.
that has then gone through and potentially missed a boat. If by that point the longitudinal research is saying, yes, this is really important, students need this, well, then a whole generation of that school has lost that.
Well, there was a Microsoft study done in 2024 of employers who, and I think over 60% said they would now only employ graduates if they were not only proficient in AI, but could also come in with the skills to teach the rest of the company how to use the AI.
Really?
Because, of course,
another level.
the job market is radically changing. And so we
Yeah.
need to be preparing our young people, whether that's university students, whether that's students in secondary education or primary education, for the world.
Yeah.
And we're not sure what that's going to look like. So they have to be adaptable. They have
We'll be
to
doing
be.
regular exams into how to do AI.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we do. I mean, it's a very crude example, but in maths we have a non-calculator exam and a calculator exam. At some point, we decided actually we should probably test what they can do with a calculator. Why can't we do something similar with AI?
Absolutely. I've often said exactly the same thing, that it is like a calculator or then Excel, that it helps people to be more proficient. It helps people to flourish more, to be able to do more. What we need to do is equip people to be able to leverage that to the greatest extent that they can.
Yeah, it's an absolute shift in human behaviour, what we're doing with AI. And so even when it comes to considering what they're going to do after school, what degree they want to do, if they want to go to university, all of these questions, everything's shifted for schools. I remember doing this basic Q&A thing on a computer. You answered a few questions and at the end it told me I should be a social worker. And it had a very basic list of jobs there. It didn't say I should be a podcast host. Podcast didn't exist. And it was a very limited set of choices.
Lacked vision.
I know. So you think now about how teenagers are looking ahead to their careers. First of all, there's going to be a lot of jobs that we probably don't even know exist right now. Well, we can hope anyway. There's also going to be a load of professions where there are going to be fewer jobs. How do you direct them? Because actually the education that you choose in the later years is often dependent for a lot of people on where they think they're going.
Yeah, and I have got quite a definite answer on this. Now, not everyone might agree, but I wrote a book covering this last year, and I think it comes down to what we tend to call entrepreneurial skills. And I don't mean that we need to prepare every student to start a business. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying actually the core of entrepreneurship is being able to discover a problem, find a solution for that problem, and then be able to sell that problem.
Yeah.
Now,
It's great if you can do that, but what about the people that's not for? Not everybody has the entrepreneur in them.
Yeah, but I think we can teach those skills. We can teach those skills. How do you critically analyze the situation and see where there might need to be an improvement? And then based on my own skills, how might I be able to help that? I think these are actually teachable skills. I was saying this in high school, so a lot of the research is being done with high school students. I dread to think and really hope it's not happening with students younger than that. But we're starting to see many students using this for friendship. Starting to see many students, and in fact there's some recent research that said that a lot of students, majority of students who had tried an AI chatbot had at least one erotic conversation with a chatbot. So the thing is, it's not necessarily something that is different to what those students were likely already doing with the internet and typing in questions around this.
It's the more human response.
It is, yeah.
It is different.
Yeah.
And all of the questions that then kick around in terms of how that trains, particularly maybe boys growing up thinking that then you can interact with a female chatbot that will do exactly what you ask it to do. It's perfect in its responses, and assuming that translates into normal life and
get a shock.
Real women ought to act like that.
Yeah, and I read somewhere recently that we're kind of moving from an economy of engagement, which we've been in with digital technology for a while, to an economy of relationship. And actually it could be in the benefit of big tech companies to drive these relationships because it keeps users on these platforms more. So we are seeing, I think it is concerning. I recently did a session with a lot of parents and of things that they could look out for, things that they really need to have conversations with their children and kind of lay some ground rules and tell them actually what why this might be bad for them.
Yeah, and of course it's very easy for us to go into the concerning conversation, and there are clearly worries and things happening that shouldn't be, but there will also be a group of people who are really benefiting from it, who struggle with interactions with humans, and it allows them to almost practice how to do that and to build their confidence in what they consider a safe environment, although obviously questions over safety and privacy, have they turned off training the model and so on, and are they old enough to be using it anyway? But I suppose there are positive sides that can exist as well, and we can't let them go away and just be like, we mustn't do this, it's bad, just because of the risk that exists.
Lots of examples of chatbots being used essentially in a therapy kind of context, or
Yeah,
for young
yeah,
people
of
then
course.
accessing mental health support and navigating some of the really difficult conversations that they need to have or should be having perhaps with an adult, but that they would find so incredibly awkward to have with their parent.
Yeah, and it's very hard to get a therapy session with a human, and so
Absolutely,
this
and
is
so
the alternative to nothing, so you've got to
making
hope
it
they
more
make it safe.
accessible. Yeah.
I think just on that, there was some research done by Stanford, I think 3 years ago now, that found that helps with higher education students. I think we just need to be really careful with students who are under 18 and kind of. I can see if we
Yes.
were monitoring these conversations, if the school or the parent had access and it alerted them to when a boundary might have been crossed.
Yeah.
But I really worry about letting our children go out into kind of the wild west of an unregulated chatbot.
Yeah. Aren't Claude and Grok over 18 anyway? And ChatGPT you can use from 13 to 18, but it has the parental controls, and there are trigger words, I think, to tell the parents if you're
Yeah.
looking at self-harm or harmful content.
There are some of that. I think some of them are a bit dubious. So
And obviously people don't always stick to them.
yeah,
You can
and
say anything.
I think I read somewhere that ChatGPT uses AI to determine whether a user is under 18 or
Yeah,
not. And-
depending
and
on the
that can-
conversation that's being used. Sometimes
that
they
can
ask for
get it
ID,
wrong.
not always.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It can be gamed. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's a bit of a Wild West, and I think while it is a Wild West, we just really need to safeguard our children, really. That's not to say we don't use AI, we don't lean into the benefits, but I think especially when it comes to minors, the more we lean into the benefits, the more the risks bear down on us. So we have to do this in a way that mitigates against the
You
risks.
need the guardrails to get the
Yeah.
best from it, but mitigate the potential downside. And you talked about permission as being this real bottleneck. I guess that is like coming back to your point about leadership. That's where we need clear leadership at a school level, at a national level, to understand how do we navigate that to get the best outcomes for our students, for our whole system, while mitigating some of those downsides.
Yeah, I use a lot in my strategic work. I use there's a professor called Vijay Govindarajan, and he has something called the 3-box model to innovation. And essentially, he works with businesses around the world, and he says box 1 is your performance engine, what you're doing, what your day-to-day work is. Most of what we do, in fact, most of what most companies do is in box 1. We've then got box 2, selectively letting go of things that no longer serve us. And number 3, creating the future. And I think he talks about there maybe being an 80-20 split between box 1 and box 3. So essentially linear innovation. Well, how can we incrementally keep improving what we're doing to non-linear innovation? And famously, you had Google, which had their 20% time, where every 1 day a week their employees could work on something. So that's a great example of this. I think education needs to look at a model like that and go, actually, there's more than just box 1. There's more than just linear innovation. There's more than just getting on with the day-to-day and hoping we just incrementally improve year by year. And I think the times now really call upon us to look over at creating the future. Now, we've talked about the limitations, the lack of resource, lack of time. That means that's going to be very difficult. But it means we need to come together. We need to come together because this is ultimately about our children and their futures. And we need to bring resource together and start trying to look at where this might go. And you know what? Innovation fails. It really does fail. But we need to do this with intent. And I think, can I just share one small story with you? When I was young, my dad used to say to me when I was up against a challenge, he would say, "You've got to throw your hat over the wall." I grew up thinking this was a saying, and I said it to people, and people were like, "What?" No, it's just something that my dad used to say apparently. But what he meant was, when you come up against a challenge, when you come up against a wall, and you don't know how to get over it yet, throw your hat over it, because if you want your hat back, you've got now no choice but to get over that wall.
Yeah.
Now, if we come up against a brick wall,
Good phrase.
if we come up against a brick wall and we go, oh, it's wide, it's high, I'm going to get injured if I try and climb this, there's no way in a million years we're going to throw our hat over it, because we're like, well, we'll just never get it back. And I think our challenge now in education is to throw the hat over without even thinking about the wall. Just for a moment, just don't even look at the wall. Don't look at the challenge ahead. Throw the hat over. And then we need to get together and start figuring out how we're going to get over that wall. Now, the first 20 times we might scrape ourselves, we might fall, we might get hurt. But on the 21st time, we might just get over the wall. And where I think this technology is going, the way the world is going, I think it's going to demand leaders in all areas of life, but leaders in education who've got the guts, who've got the courage to throw the hat over the wall and then go, right, how are we going to do it?
I love that. Dan Fitzpatrick, the AI Educator, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
What surprised me in that interview was that Dan doesn't think that things are going to change a huge amount. And maybe there's also some sort of argument that education shouldn't change that much.
That kind of question of permission and leadership, or lack of permission, lack of leadership, meaning that we could end up with this kind of inertia that AI sits there, the curriculum review, that it sort of sits in a backwater. It's
holding back because we're not sure what to do.
Absolutely. For me, that would be such a tragedy, that you could see Dan's excitement, telling the story of his friend Phil and how his daughter had really propelled forward in maths because of using ChatGPT to help with that. And to me, that's a glimmer of the opportunity that we have, that if we leverage tech well, yes, conscious of the downsides, yes, conscious of putting in guardrails, mitigating risk, but we've got to be optimistic. We've got to take the opportunity and say, well, how can this unlock potential in our young people, in our children?
Yeah. And you're actually taking this to a more exciting place, that we could actually really benefit in amazing new ways. Whereas I think many parents are probably just concerned that education now isn't serving their kids well enough. They just want it to do the right job and be good enough for what they're doing in future. But actually, you see this as an opportunity for going way beyond that and making education amazing.
I think it's just defeatist if we're only thinking of the risk, or we're only thinking it's kind of good enough. Like, good enough is never good enough. Surely we've got to desperately push for excellent.
Yeah, and just to clarify, our education here is excellent. Education is amazing. We're just talking about how we train our children for that new world that they're going to move into.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
And thank you for joining us. That's it for this week. Please do like and subscribe.
And make sure you catch us next week for another special Q&A episode where we're going to be digging deep into the questions that you are asking. See you next time.
Bye.